Tonight, postal pileup, a backlog from a nationwide strike forces a shipping freeze.
This is a fight over literally the existential future of the post office.
Purolator and UPS suspend some services, delivering another hit to holiday mail.
They've added demands that are throwing us in the wrong direction.
The deepening divide between Canada Post and its union, sounding the alarm on a swarm of thefts.
The amount of people involved in an individual incident are going up.
Plus, a solemn milestone, 35 years since the Montreal massacre.
So I visited various floors with the detective, and we took all the different pictures.
Focus on the far north, why Canada is fortifying its foothold in the region.
The Arctic is no longer a low-tension region.
And the perfect reunion.
He must have been so scared. I can only imagine.
A lost cat's long way back home after a wild adventure.
A happiness at this time of a sadness.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. The clock is ticking on a critical holiday period. Businesses and Canadians desperate to get parcels delivered were dealt another blow today. Major shipping companies now turning down smaller couriers as Purolator and UPS deal with a backlog built up by the Canada Post strike. CTV's Alison Bamford now on the delays and the latest exchange between the company and the union.
Wrapped up in packages, an added layer of stress. This handcrafted gift store was forced to find shipping alternatives to Canada Post, and now this.
So it's telling us that we have a temporary UPS 48 to 72 hour service restriction.
Purolator and UPS pressed pause on shipments from some third-party courier companies, an effort to clear the backlog of deliveries brought on by the strike.
We are going to have to make a really big decision on whether we can even take shipments for the rest of December. On
the negotiation front, Canada Post responded to a counter proposal from the union this afternoon. Tonight, no deal.
We're extremely disappointed. The minister seemed to be very clear with both sides that we were supposed to come back with something that was going to work for 55,000 of our members. They've added demands that are throwing us in the wrong direction.
Both sides say they're committed to getting back to negotiations after federal mediation stalled last week.
There is no common ground between the two parties because this is a fight over literally the existential future of the post office.
A future that's already on the decline when it comes to mail delivery. Experts say the strike will only accelerate that and force the Crown Corp to change its business model.
The post office is no longer essential to large numbers of Canadians, but it's still extraordinarily important to a much smaller segment.
Like small businesses that are now worried about the strike's long-term impact on consumer trust. If customers can't depend on those shops to deliver, they may just switch to Amazon for all their online orders.
And Amazon has put such a high bar on free shipping and overnight, like it's so easy, and we have to be up to that bar. We have to be able to offer those same type of services.
Now that the strike is disrupting service for private couriers, experts say it could add to the growing calls for government intervention. Heather?
Alison Bamford reporting tonight. Thanks. Canada's unemployment rate rose more than expected in November to a near 8-year high outside the pandemic era. It jumped to 6.8%. That means Canada had 1.5 million unemployed people last month. CTV's Sarah Plowman breaks down the numbers and what it could mean for interest rates.
To negotiate in a pawn shop takes skill, and so does navigating this job market.
It's honestly kind of confusing is a simple way to put it.
Combined, these two applied for dozens of jobs before getting hired here. Most times, no one responded.
Kind of leaves you questioning whether you are actually capable to get a job sometimes.
Actually, it's quite hard, especially if you're not a very high-skilled worker.
Job seekers face a hurdle. The unemployment rate that's been steadily climbing for more than a year and a half reached a near 8-year high last month, despite a gain of 51,000 jobs. Yes, there are openings, but there are more people job hunting.
Young people, new graduates and newcomers joining the labor force, but then the demand simply isn't there for them to be hired right away.
Unemployment among youth rose to nearly 14% last month.
So for youth, it's been tougher breaking into the labor market. Then for people who have been in the labor market, but who are unlucky enough to lose their job or are re-entering the workforce, it's taken longer for them to find new jobs.
A job posting here leads to a long list of applicants. Many are overqualified.
They need work. They can't find it.
Today's job numbers come days ahead of the Bank of Canada's next announcement. Many experts anticipate another cut to the key interest rate. The debate now is by how much.
Whether they're going to cut by 25 basis points or 50 basis points.
A lot of people are expecting to see a rate cut of 0.5%, given the signs of a weaker labor market. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, Fredericton.
Police across Canada are dealing with a disturbing new trend, a spike in brazen jewelry and retail store robberies. CTV's Alex Karpa shows us what makes these thefts different and why they're causing so much concern.
This was the scene in Markham, Ontario earlier this week as 6 people were seen smashing glass and stealing product at a jewelry store. And this from Thursday night in Ancaster, Ontario, where a truck reversed through the front window of another jewelry store. It's all part of a new trend called swarming theft, a new tactic where groups of young people swarm store employees to steal expensive products.
You're seeing the amount of people involved in an individual incident are going up, whether we're 2 or 3, we're starting to get 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, depending on the size of the store.
It's not just jewelry stores being targeted, so too are retail stores. This video from Edmonton Police shows 3 people aggressively taking several products off a store wall. The Retail Council of Canada says many business owners are impacted by a rise in theft.
There are victims, whether it's people, whether it's people's businesses, our communities. Retail crime's just growing at a pace we'd like to see reduced.
Criminologist Dr. Michael Weinrath says it's time for all 3 levels of government to start investing more into things like mental health, social, and addiction services.
When these things happen, you get people frustrated, you get people disaffected, engaging in drug use, drug abuse. And so there's the broader things that we need to do.
Police here in Winnipeg announced earlier this week that more officers will be stationed at some of the city's biggest shopping areas throughout the holiday season to try and prevent incidents like these that are happening right across the country. Alex Karpa, CTV News, Winnipeg.
We have some dramatic video of a transport truck exploding on the side of a Toronto highway.
So for now, just the left lane is available. Oh boy, that was quite something. Okay, so very dangerous situation.
The explosion captured live on Toronto's all-news station, CP24. Fortunately, the driver had already exited the vehicle and no one was injured. Today marks 35 years since a gunman targeted and killed 14 women at École Polytechnique in Montreal, simply because of their gender. Now immortalized as symbols in the fight against femicide, they were honored today across the country. CTV's Quebec Bureau Chief Javier Boschman has more on the painful memories and those first on scene.
Nathalie Croteau.
15 beams of light over the Montreal sky. One for each of the 14 women killed because they were women, and one to represent other victims of femicide.
Anne-Marie Edouard.
Their names remembered so that the horror of that day 35 years ago is never forgotten.
14 persons were killed, all women, and the suspect was found dead.
Few saw as much as Harold Rosenberg did through his lens.
So I visited various floors with the detective, and we took all the different pictures.
He was a photographer with the Montreal police then, called in to document the massacre. When he got there, he says it was pandemonium. He spotted a detective he knew.
I said to him, what's going on here? And he said, there's 14 people dead. And I said, what are you talking about? And that's when it started.
He took dozens of photographs of the evidence, even a video, not common practice then. He captured images of the classroom where the gunmen separated male and female engineering students.
He told us to get out. I don't know what happened with the girls, though.
One was Nathalie Provost. She pleaded with the shooter.
We are just women who study and engineer.
The gunman killed 6 women in that room and would murder 8 others throughout the school before shooting himself.
After I finished videotaping in the room, they, as I was leaving, they turned him over and found this note or these documents that he had on him, and I think that's where they realized that he had some sort of manifesto.
He also mentioned that that feminists have always ruined his life.
In his 30-year career, Rosenberg witnessed a lot of accidents and murders.
You have sort of this invisible shield, you know, that shield.
But not remembering what he saw that day, well, that's not an option. Geneviève Beauchemin, CTV News, Montreal.
New developments in the Manhattan manhunt after the targeted killing of a health insurance executive in cold blood. Investigators believe the person of interest has now left the city. And as CTV's Joy Melvin reports, a new piece of evidence has also been found.
New York investigators are convinced this man in these unmasked images is likely their suspect, letting down his guard in a flirtatious moment with a woman who checked him into a New York hostel, providing police with their best clue yet.
We had to go through lots of video evidence to get that one money shot of him with the mask down.
Confident someone will recognize him after a gunman stalked and killed United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, left for dead on the sidewalk. The suspect was last seen riding a bike out of Central Park without that backpack. In a city with a network of cameras, detectives tracking every move say he likely fled the city.
He loses the bike. And then from there, we have him in a taxi cab, and the taxi cab takes him up to 178th Street and Broadway, which, as we know, is a Port Authority bus center. That's why we believe he may have left New York City.
Police deployed drones and an army of officers searching Central Park, believing that this may be that backpack. They'll analyze the contents. Before the killing, the suspect stopped at a Starbucks, where police are testing for fingerprints and DNA from a discarded water bottle and phone.
We're on the right path, and we believe we're going to apprehend this person.
Shell casings at the crime scene had the words deny, defend, and depose scrawled on the bullets, echoing similar words on a book about why insurance companies don't pay claims. The targeted killing has rattled the insurance industry.
And helping people live healthier lives.
Companies beefing up security, even pulling pictures of top executives off their websites.
Detectives are banking on someone recognizing the suspect's face, but he could be anywhere now in the U.S. as this search expands to multiple states. Heather?
CTV's Joy Melvin in Washington. Canada is planning to boost its presence in the Arctic and work more closely with the U.S. to ensure regional security in the face of an increasingly aggressive Russia. It's all laid out in a new Arctic foreign policy. CTV's Jeremy Sharon has the details.
A new strategy for Canada to protect the Arctic from future threats and incoming challenges.
Canada is an Arctic nation, and we are at a critical moment. The Arctic is no longer a low-tension region.
Canada plans to address major changes in the region and a shifting geopolitical landscape through its new Arctic foreign policy, a diplomatic strategy. Among a list of key initiatives, Canada will appoint an Arctic ambassador and will open new consulates in Anchorage, Alaska, and Nuuk, Greenland.
It will protect our interests. It will help us share information. It will help obtain information, intelligence, and ultimately it will help us to be able to be much more aware of what's going on and be able to ultimately react.
Chief among Canada's concerns in the region, Russia and its Arctic infrastructures, military capabilities, and relationship with China in the region, and climate change, specifically the speed at which the Arctic is warming and the growing access to shipping routes because of it.
And while the region's remote location and challenging terrain have kept it protected for many generations,
as Melanie's indicated, that reality is rapidly changing.
Canada's defence minister points to the need for collective defence and diplomatic efforts to assert Canada's sovereignty in the Arctic and the North. The timing of the policy launch, an indication of pressure coming from the incoming Donald Trump administration in the U.S., which has been clear on the importance of defense spending.
We value the Canadians' cooperation in securing the Arctic region and that is peaceful, stable, and prosperous and cooperative.
Today's announcement provides 5 years of funding, $34 million upfront and $7 million ongoing. But military experts say it isn't nearly enough. Heather?
CTV's Jeremy Sharon in Ottawa. Global Affairs is urging Canadians to leave the Syrian capital of Damascus as rebel forces rapidly advance towards the city in a renewed offensive. Thousands of people have already fled the city of Homs after insurgents seized 2 towns on its outskirts. The insurgents, led by an Islamist militant group, have launched the largest campaign against President Bashar al-Assad's government in years, after a long stalemate in the country's 14-year-old civil war. Coming up.
The most common group that is getting it are people that are under-vaccinated or unvaccinated.
The concerning spread of whooping cough across Canada. Plus, the beginning of the end of an era in Vancouver. Cases of respiratory infections are rising in Canada as the temperature drops. One that's particularly worrying for healthcare experts this season, pertussis, also known as whooping cough. The number of people infected is surging, and doctors want families to be vigilant. CTV's Heather Wright explains.
It's an infection that can cause people to cough so hard they break a rib. Whooping cough not only causes severe coughing, but fatigue and difficulty breathing. And it's on the rise across Canada.
The most common group that is getting it are people that are under-vaccinated or unvaccinated, and also adults that have waning immunity.
Ontario has recorded the highest number of whooping cough cases since 2007. So far this year, there have been more than 1,400 cases, roughly 4 times as many as last year. Cases are also on the rise across the country. 19,000 cases have been reported, a sharp increase from a typical year of between 1,000 and 3,000. Health experts are urging parents to make sure their children's vaccinations and their own are up to date.
I think we can attribute a lot of this to the fact that we've seen flagging vaccination rates, a lot of it due to the pandemic, some of it due to the anti-vaccine sentiment and vaccine fatigue.
Whooping cough is a highly contagious disease that can affect anyone, but is most common in young people. Elderly people are vulnerable, as are babies that are too young to be inoculated.
So they actually might not cough. They might actually just have a pause in their breathing. And that's why it is so severe for them and why we need to make sure that they're protected.
Of the 58 people hospitalized in Ontario, half were under the age of 1. 4 babies had to be treated in the ICU. Whooping cough is cyclical, and doctors say this rise in cases is within the typical pattern of the disease, though they note these numbers are much higher than what's usually seen. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
Still ahead, home sweet home. From escaping wildfires to 100 days in the wilderness for one Jasper cat. A historic weekend kicked off in Vancouver today as Taylor Swift's Eras Tour comes to a close.
I feel like Taylor Swift has been the soundtrack to my life.
Swifties from around the world have come to the city for the final 3 shows. This man, a fire chief by profession and it seems a Swiftie by passion, had his daughter's help with his costume.
Has Taylor Swift brought you closer to your daughter?
Oh, big time, yeah. This is a once-in-a-lifetime trip.
The weekend marks the culmination of 149 shows in 50 cities across 5 continents. A remarkable survival story now of a lost cat found after 100 days in the BC wilderness.
He probably survived by, eating the odd mouse here and there. Maybe got into garbage.
Nicole Kloffenstein was in Jasper, Alberta when she was babysitting Felix for her sister. The call then came to evacuate Jasper because of the wildfire. She relocated to a family cabin in BC where Felix went missing. After weeks of searching, she returned to Jasper where, after a few false alarms, she eventually got a call saying Felix was spotted 15 kilometers from the cabin in a marsh.
Me and my sister looked at each other like, it's him! It's him! And it's like, this is it. If only he could speak of what he went through.
Felix had lost about half his body weight, but is doing well. And Nicole says before this, he was considered a house cat. Still ahead, reality and dreams merge in the Nutcracker. The young couple on a magical Christmas adventure together. The Nutcracker blends a beautiful story of imagination and reality. And tonight we have a real fairy tale romance adding to one Toronto performance. CTV's Pauline Chan has more on the holiday magic for a young couple taking center stage.
Kota Sato noticed Brenna Flaherty when she first joined the company, but then the pandemic happened, and it was difficult because Brenna spent time with her family in the U.S. while Kota went back to his in Japan. But true love prevails, and they were married in Japan last January.
The wedding planning process was a bit difficult just because we were across the world and we had, to translate everything.
It was amazing, and it was so nice to see everyone I loved. Brenna's family and everyone was gathered in the same room, and we celebrated together, and it was just so special.
While they have danced on stage together before, this season's Nutcracker will be the first time they're both playing the leads. And for Brenna, it will be her debut as the Sugar Plum Fairy.
I think Nutcracker for me, and I think a lot of other dancers would say this, is that it sort of is like a benchmark of someone's career. So everyone does Nutcracker in the company, and usually kids do it from the school as well. So you sort of rise up through the ranks.
Kota plays Peter, the stable boy who transforms into the Nutcracker Prince.
He's the good older brother figure for Misha and Marie, and we're great friends. And they're gonna fall asleep at the night after the party, and they're gonna have crazy dream to go to the battle of all the animals and beautiful snow scenes.
Is it difficult for the married couple to also work together?
I think it's easier to dance together because I know how she functions, and I know how we can communicate so well in studio or at home, which helps a lot.
It's a holiday classic that both have worked hard to achieve. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
A very talented couple. That is our newscast for this Friday night. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. I'm Heather Butts. Good night, and I'll see you again tomorrow.